If you have an interview coming up with a senior leader, an executive, or an executive panel, here is one secret that they're not going to tell you on this app or anywhere else that we're looking for when you walk in that room. Hi, my name is Beverly. This is Secrets from a COO Part 2, because I'm spilling the tea on things that are often gatekept on this app. You will often hear on this app from many different creators, speak to your experience, tell your story, and yes, do that. You may even hear things about the STAR method and all these other methods, which I know have helped many people. However, when you get to those senior level interviews, I'm sorry to tell you, they don't give a damn about your story. They may care about the through line as to where you got to where you want to go. They care about data. Let me put you into the mindset of an executive leader. When we're interviewing candidates, we want to assess whether or not that candidate has the demonstrated ability to do the things that we are looking for from that role. And what makes candidates stand out are the ones that are able to speak to with metrics their experience having done the things that are expected from the role. So when they come to the table and they're speaking with numerics, with qualitative metrics, with quantitative metrics, and they're able to quickly call back to those things, it demonstrates to us a couple of things. One, that they're able to retain KPIs and different OKRs that are going to be translated to the organization and now speak to them because they've lived that experience. B, they're highly accountable because they're able to quickly recall the ways in which they have exceeded expectations, met expectations, and so on from sharing quantifiable data. And C, it gives us a confidence that when given an objective, you're able to execute and then retain. And if you want to be able to do that for life, not just for this interview process if you're in one, but for all interview processes, then you need to be tracking your metrics when you're at your current job or the next job you wind up with. Because then if you're tracking your metrics, you can go back to them always. And then you'll always have things to speak on in your interviews and on your resume. And if you're still thinking to yourself, okay, well, how do I speak to my metrics if I'm not even tracking them or I haven't been tracking them? Head to my link in bio because I am teaching people literally how to do this so that you are forever able to answer an executive panel, an executive interview, because you're going to be able to speak to your metrics for life. Start talking about your metrics because that is really what we're looking for. We know you can do it, so show us what you've done, okay?
I have a genuine question for folks who are following niche creators like myself. Hi, my name is Beverly. I'm a chief operating officer and CEO. I just launched my business for the first time last week. It's still so weird to say. And I created separate accounts, one for lifestyle and one for this, because a lot of this content is centered around corporate empowerment, tips, career, so on. Part of the reason I created a separate account was so that it wouldn't get in the way of the other content that's on my page, and it felt really focused for folks who are just looking for me for tips and things like that. However, what I noticed is that quite a few folks are going to that other account because I'm talking about tips about beauty and travel and corporate and conferences and experiences and things like that. And I did some research on TikTok and I looked at kind of the perspective in the zeitgeist about whether or not you should have multiple accounts to fit different niches for your content. And I guess I'm a little conflicted because obviously I want to meet my community where they're at and I want to ensure that they have access to the resources and tools and tips that they desire. And so if you're a community member of mine or you're a creator yourself, what would you recommend? Because I'm not just a CEO, COO. I am a musician, I'm a singer, I'm a filmmaker, I'm a producer, I am an actor, I do a lot of other things. And so I guess I want to ensure that my content is resonant, but also authentic. And it has been a little confusing seeing what has worked best for other creators. And I also want to ensure that I maintain consistency on empowering the content that has gotten me to this place and the community members that have gotten me to this place. And a funny example of this is I posted some fashion talks on this main account, but then they didn't really do very well. And I prematurely pulled my fashion talks because I thought maybe folks didn't want to see corporate fashion or corporate tips on travel and tips and trips on work spaces and different things like that. And I'm wondering if maybe that was really premature. So let me know. And if this is something you'd be interested in for me to maintain on this main page, that would not only be great for me because it's only one page to manage, but I think it would be great for the community to see kind of the holistic element of what it means to be a leader in corporate, but also how I can empower you to maintain space for all of the elements of yourself, because I do a lot of things and I want to empower you to do a lot of things too.
If you want to get promoted in business, here is one thing that people are not going to tell you about looks and perception from a COO. Get into this tip. Perception is reality. Whether you are working virtually, wearing a uniform, and everything in between, it matters. But how? People on this app will tell you that pretty privilege and how you look is going to supersede a lot of things, and that's only part of the story. I cannot tell you how many times in my career, over the many industries I have worked in, where somebody was promoted not only because they were a qualified candidate, but because they presented overall better than the other person they were up against. They wore slacks when everyone else wore sweatpants. They kept their hair cut when others maybe weren't. Their fingernails were freaking clean. They kept their breath fresh. They smelled nice when they walked by. All of that matters. One way that I see people trip up here is when they take the culture at face value. For example, if your company says that they have a casual policy, they have a casual culture and they're just all vibes, and you see that the CEO is regularly wearing sweatpants, t-shirts, everything in between, you may think, well, it's all right to do so. We have a casual culture here. Wrong. Are you the CEO? Are you cutting these checks? Until you are in a position of power, you got to keep things on check. And unfortunately, if you're of intersectional background, this always applies to you. Now, dressing up can look different for different people. And this doesn't even have to be expensive either. I think what people often get stressed about or frustrated about is like, okay, I don't want to have to wear a suit to the office every day. That's actually not what I'm talking about. Some of the best dressed people I have ever worked alongside never wore a suit. And some of the best dresses that I've ever gotten compliments on in my career were less than $25. They just didn't know. It's about presentation and feeling confident in the overall presentation that you're giving. And if you're not feeling confident, you've heard the term fake it till you make it. I personally don't believe in that. I believe in having a baseline and honoring that baseline. But if you look good, you feel a little bit better, and people will perceive you a lot differently. And sometimes it boils down to even having stains on your clothes and other things like that. Lint. All of those things add up to the perception as to whether or not you're taking care of yourself. I used to work in public transportation on the admin side, and there were bus operators who would press their shirts and their slacks every day. When I worked in healthcare, from the MAs through the nurses to the PAs, people were ironing their scrubs. It's not always just about how you look aesthetically. A lot of the time, it is the full thing. And in this hiring market, that matters. It doesn't have to be expensive and it doesn't have to be overwhelming. So comment below if you want more tips on how you can do so cost effectively and in a way that will make sense for your budget and your peace of mind.
Number one, AI is not going anywhere. So you don't have that option to continue to push back at it. You're pushing back at your own peril, whether that's your job or your company. Here's a couple of data points. I want every senior leader watching this to go look up the C-Suite Stress Index. It was a study done earlier this year or late last year and published earlier this year. They surveyed 1,000 different CEOs and executives, C-suite leaders. 76% of them believe that in the next 2 years, they'll be fired.